you manage data daily, their scheduled updates, that kind of stuff? Okay, so I'll be mostly talking to your area. Everybody else is more to understand what data administrators do, I guess, or how we can improve the system. So I've talked before at previous, mostly in Calgary, I guess, conferences about the benefits of having a centralized generic workbenches that can handle various data loads by having published parameters that can customize the process so that it can handle any amount or any feature class. And that way you're minimizing the amount of scripts that you have in your repertoire. That way whenever FME releases a new version, you don't have to do that much work to update or upgrade to the new version, as well as many other benefits like standardizing your data, which was the topic of that talk. Once you have that house in order, now you have to manage your data or monitor it. One way is to have these kind of dashboards where you have to go and check in every morning or even after work to make sure that during business hours the data's up to date and properly updated and ready to go. Not my preferred method. That's unfortunately what I'm doing right now. Since I did just recently start at Talisman, this is how we're doing it there right now. What I prefer, and I've done in the past, is to build in quality control right into the workbench, to have Python scripts that email you directly if anything goes through, whether it's, in this case, domain value falls out of your domain so that when you load it into the database, it's going to reject it, or many other scenarios like that. And of course, if the update fails, then you get a notification right away. That way you don't have to go and wait to look at some data monitoring tool to find out if anything went wrong. And using that system, the desktop is the one that's actually notifying our JAS data administrator there. And so that's one way of doing it that I had been using until now, where FME Server has this notification system. Now the server itself can email you, so you can avoid all that Python code within your personal scripts. And this is the notification system here. I'll be talking more in depth about that later. And this particular function uses the subscription mechanism. Now, once you have this in place, it's great, but now it's constantly notifying you about problems, and so you're concerned more with work-life balance. So we have our data administrator. Let's say he's out on a social date, and you know, he's got a personal life to take care of, and suddenly FME notifies him there's an issue. Well, without the notification system fully implemented, he may have to go off and deal with the issue on a desktop. He has to log in, remote into work, and deal with the issue. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Of course, the relationship suffers, and eventually it leads to Splitsville. And yeah, you know, life goes down the drain. So if we rewind that a bit, now we go back to our scenario. We have our data happening. But this time the notification comes, and our data administrator is fully aware and capable in the notification system. So he waits for an opportunity like, you know, a restroom call or some other such opportunity. And then using his knowledge of the notification system on the publication side, now he can actually email back to FME Server and have a process occur where hopefully it takes care of the data. The first time it occurs, you may not be ready for it, but subsequent issues you can fix remotely that way. And of course, without interrupting the date. The date resumes and the relationship blooms. So there you have it, FME Server saving relationships since 2012. Service Pack 3, it wasn't in place until then. And this applies to, you know, all kinds of activities. You don't want to be constantly near a computer, haul your laptop around like to the conferences like this to check in or do anything like that. So you can carry your cell phone around and do any of these activities without having to worry about it. And that's obviously a common trend nowadays. I don't know if you know this, but the millennials, they're called, 18 to 29. A lot of them, I've heard stats where they don't even have cell phones, or home phones. All they have is a cell phone. And so obviously this trend's going to continue where people are going to want to use their cell phones for everything, or tablets or whatever they have. also, it's applicable not just for us, data administrators, but there are other scenarios. When I was at Nexon, there was one regulation from the government to have all the pipelines in the system. I was implementing their APM there. And they needed to have everybody who was involved with the system have access to a total list of the pipelines in the system. And at the time, I had a FME server, but I gave them a link, and they had to log in. And it's great and everything, but if you don't use FME server often, hopefully you have Active Directory, but even then, you don't have to remember another password. You still have to remember what repository and which script to run and everything. So this way, if you set it up with an email system, which I will do now that I have the capability, you can just email the people involved with a proper subject line and everything like we did with the voting yesterday. And that way they can just reply directly to FME server, and they can get the report attached right back to them. And that way they have access to it without having to log into any kind of a system. Another scenario would be often people want data reprojected. They can ship it off to FME with certain parameters. FME server can reply right back with the data reprojected. Or different formats, like FME said 100 times where they've seen scenarios where people just send shapefiles or want shapefiles, not even to another format, they just want it properly formatted. So then they get the shapefile right back, or any number of scenarios. So it's not just for us data administrators. Talk a little bit about the actual mechanism, in case you're not familiar with it yet. It's a great system. It's easy to set up too. You don't have to go. There was that one talk Tuesday. They used what was it, Red Booth, and to be a go-between FME server and doing this kind of thing for preparing for the zombie outbreak. But it's easily usable without any kind of intermediate steps. You set up two topics like this. You have on the subscription side, email subscription, and that's what you use in your Workbench to notify the server that something went wrong, a topic like this. And so that triggers the server to send an email to whoever's on that email subscription, meaning most likely the data administrator. And attached to the other side, the other topic is the email trigger publication. And that's when the administrator emails back to the FME server. Then there's a trigger that creates some kind of a process kickoff. And that's most likely something like this, where it extracts the email and processes the contents and does some kind of action, depending on what's in the email. One caution, though, you are bypassing security at this point, because you have, in order to call a Workbench or something from FME server, you have to provide credentials. And so in this case, you're actually passing, or at least I am passing, my administrative credentials, so I have access to all the repositories that somebody else might not. And so there's that caution that if you're not behind a firewall, somebody might actually email your server directly and could cause problems. So in closing, there's a data administrator with his handy mobile device, and of course the power of FME server's notification system. This will come in handy if you implement it and say an event like this comes around next time. Your managers or you yourself won't be so hesitant to leave and come to an event like this, because you can handle your data management remotely. Thanks. Yeah, and you could do that, say, make sure that this is the email it's coming in from, but it's so easy to change those parameters that it's not adding much security. It is a good step, and you could implement a whole bunch of different, mitigation techniques, but yeah, it's still insecure. But you are behind the firewall, so as long as you keep it so that, because your FME server is like ours is fmeserver.tlm.com, so you're within that domain. Somebody emails that domain from here, hopefully they can't get routed right into the server, right? So the security is more on your firewall end rather than internally within your process. I guess if you have people who like to prank you at work, they can access it. So then you might want to put something like that. But. Yeah. I'm not sure. I started right into 2014. I had Talisman here. I hadn't implemented it when I was at Nexon, so I don't know how 2013 deals with it, but I looked it up, and apparently it was 2012 Service Pack 3 that it was implemented into FME Server, so it's been available since then. Good thing I waited.